Hello and welcome to Stretford Paddock. This is the news. It is Thursday, the 29th of September. We are live, so get in the comments. Let me know your thoughts on all of the stories today. We're looking at a few different things. Firstly, we'll be looking at this Victor Osimhen, Cristiano Ronaldo, £100 million swap deal that Dharmesh Sheth of Sky has reported on. That is from this summer. Something that apparently Ten Hag decided to decline, but we've got the details of that coming up. We've also got an injury update for the weekend. Obviously, football is back. Proper football is back. On Sunday, Manchester United play Manchester City, and we have a couple of injury updates there. There's also, Rob Dawson did an AMA sort of Q&A session on Reddit. And we've got the transcripts of that, and there's a few very interesting details of that. Rob Dawson, of course, journalist and friend of the show, I suppose you could say. He's been on a few times. But we've got some good stories there. One about Casemiro in particular, that basically it wasn't Ten Hag's decision to sign Casemiro. So we'll get into that and get into everyone's thoughts on that as we go along. First of all, if you haven't already, hit subscribe. We're live all the time with news. We're back with watch-alongs, the new and improved watch-along this Sunday. Extra features, extra people, loads of stuff going on. And if you want to see all of that, make sure you hit subscribe and hit the notification bell as well so you see when we go live before anyone else. Let's start off with this story here about Cristiano Ronaldo. So Dharmesh Sheth, again, been on the channel before. We spoke to him, very reliable journalist over at Sky, has good sources in good places, has commented on what at the time seemed like a sort of almost pie in the sky, this isn't going to happen, it's make up what you want type rumour. And yet it looks as though now maybe there was some truth to this. This is the rumour that apparently Manchester United turned down a deal which would have involved Cristiano Ronaldo moving to Napoli with Victor Osimhen coming the other way. United have been heavily linked with the Nigerian striker who has taken Serie A by storm. We'll talk about the actual whether he's taken anything by storm or not, but he's obviously a high-profile player that moved there a couple of years ago for £60 million, I believe, rising up to 80. It's claimed that Napoli wanted £100 million for Osimhen and the Reds to pay all of Ronaldo's wages. However, according to Dharmesh, United decided that it was a non-starter and walked away. The mad thing about that is they wanted us to buy Osimhen for £100 million, which is arguable whether he's even worth that. Because if you just look at his stats here, I've got him ready here. This season, obviously, you know, we've only just started. So let's look at last year. In the 2021-2022 season, he got 18 goals and 6 assists in 32. So just over a goal every other game, which is pretty good. You know, that's good striking numbers. The year before that, 10 goals, 3 assists in 30 games. The year before that, he got 18 goals, 6 assists in 38 games. This is a man that typically gets less than a goal every other game and very few assists alongside that. And we're trying to look at £100 million fee plus whatever you value Ronaldo at, plus Ronaldo's wages every week, which is another roughly 500 grand a week. So over the course of a season, you're looking at 15, 20 million quid there as well. Absolutely bonkers. Absolutely insane numbers for a player that, like I said, is a 1-in-2 striker at best. I don't quite understand why that deal would have been entertained, and by the look of it, it wasn't. Although it is interesting to see the state of the market for attackers around Europe at the moment, that someone like Victor Osimhen, who is a very talented, good player, but again, isn't nearly, you know, you couldn't consider him prolific by any means, is being valued at £100 million plus Cristiano Ronaldo. Check out the mugs, by the way, paddockmerch.com. Lovely that. Let's move on. That deal didn't happen. I'm glad it didn't happen because it would have been United being absolutely taken advantage of by the situation we found ourselves in and by Napoli. But yeah, it seems as though that deal was a genuine offer in the summer, and that, you know, Dharmesh Sheth there from Sky confirming that Napoli had the audacity to ask for £100 million and Cristiano Ronaldo and you pay his wages. So, you know, there you go. United rejected it, and I'm glad we did. Let's move on to our next story. And this is, like I said, coming from that Q&A with Rob Dawson on Reddit. It was done in audio form, which is unlike usual Q&As that you see over there. It's usually a text and then they reply with their own text, but this was done over audio. Excuse me. And this is that Casemiro. Let's start slightly higher up. So United looked at the better part of 100 players in the window, out of which they only ended up signing 3 or 4 of the most promising candidates. Players like Martinez and Malacia and Antony were far down United's list in March before Ten Hag came in. They were Ten Hag's own picks. Similarly, Frenkie de Jong was considered a much easier deal in March, but Casemiro was not. And then, obviously that turned around and the club had to adapt to it. So Ten Hag coming in is what spawned and started these signings of Martinez, Malacia and Antony, which I think is pretty plain to see for any football fan. You get a new manager from the Dutch League coming in, all of a sudden you're signing 3 players from the Dutch League and you're trying to get a player that used to play in the Dutch League under the very same manager. It's no surprise there that happened. The next point, though, is that Casemiro was not Casemiro was a recommendation of the recruitment department. The plan is to accommodate him in the team's best 11, but Ten Hag is sensitive to the mood in the dressing room, and McTominay has been playing well, so he wants to keep rewarding the good performances. Interesting there, that basically is saying, first of all, Casemiro wasn't Ten Hag's choice, which that's life as a football manager. I'm sure, I don't think we need to make too much of the fact that Ten Hag wanted Frenkie de Jong over Casemiro. I'm pretty sure anyone who's watching with a pair of eyes could see that. The second point is almost confirmation of what we've seen so far, is that while McTominay's playing this well, it could be possibly detrimental to the mood around the squad to drop a player that is appearing and performing to the standards that Scott McTominay is, because all of a sudden you look around the dressing room and if he gets dropped for no reason, then you go, well, what's the point in, we're not being rewarded for how well we play. It's just we're being picked on the size of our name in terms of our reputation. So I think it makes sense that, Scott McTominay continues to play whilst his performances are good, and it also allows Casemiro to be brought in slowly, which is no bad thing, if you ask me. But yeah, it's just sort of confirmation there from Rob Dawson that basically expect to see more of Scott McTominay while he's playing well. Ten Hag doesn't want to upset players, upset the rest of the dressing room by dropping an informed player for a player that is, not particularly in form just because he's a bigger name. So I think that's the right thing, personally. Lee Hopper, talking about the Osimhen deal, says, if Antony was 80 million, Osimhen could easily be 100, especially if you're only focusing on stats. The modern market is mad, but imagine how good Osimhen could be under Ten Hag if he did want him. I agree that, you're looking at a lot of money. I would also say that we spent too much on Antony. Not that I don't want him, not that I think we shouldn't have bought him, but we paid more than he's worth. And that doesn't therefore mean that Osimhen is now worth 100 million. I think we paid too much for Antony. Also, it's not just 100 million. It's 100 million plus Ronaldo, plus Ronaldo's wages. So in that first year alone, you're spending 125 million, because there's 100 million for Osimhen, plus half of Ronaldo's wages. Plus Ronaldo's wages, which 50 grand a year, 500 grand a week for a year. What's that, 25 million quid? So it's not just 100 million, it's 125 million. Before, Ronaldo might be there for 2 years. So, it's a lot of money. Dennis Ross says, Ten Hag said the price to quality ratio is out of balance in terms of Premier League players. That's spot on. And why are all of our players from outside of the Premier League? Yeah, buying players from inside the Premier League is very expensive. That's, look at Jack Grealish, £100 million for a player that is a decent to good, or very good, maybe at best, sort of attacking player. Grealish is another weird one that they spent so much money on him, because he doesn't really have a position. Is he a left mid? Is he a left winger? He's not really a winger, but he's not a midfielder. He's not. Can he play in the 10? Kind of, but he drifts out. Like he's a sort of loosely sort of left-hand side forward attacking player with no real pace, and he doesn't really score. And he's worth 100 million quid. Just sort of an ethereal, kind of tricky, skillful winger who doesn't really score, but he's also not a winger. I don't know. That's how much you have to pay for players from Aston Villa as well. So you're not even buying it off a rival. Grealish is like a left attacking mid, but that's typically not a position in football these days. I know Pep likes to play sort of Bernardo Silvas and Fodens and these sorts of players who in the past would have been a number 10. He likes to play them out wide. But, you know, it's an interesting one with Jack Grealish. He's very much a sort of old-fashioned type of player where you just go out and have fun, lad. He'd have been unbelievable in the 90s where the tactics were a lot more of counter-attack or, you know, express yourself, you know, motivational words rather than you have to stand here, you have to press when they pass it, you have to do this, you have to do that. But he was 100 million quid. That's just the price of players, unfortunately. Let's move on to our next story then. And this is an injury update ahead of the derby at the weekend. Harry Maguire set to miss out after that injury that he seemed to sustain in the international break. We saw reference to that Harry Kane saying he was basically playing on one leg against Germany. Marcus Rashford looks as though he should be back. He's training and is apparently winning the race against time to be fit for the weekend and can be expected to return to the side should there be no further setbacks. That's according to the Mirror, which is obviously fantastic news. Anthony Martial is looking like he might not be fit. Again, Ten Hag a couple of weeks ago said he's still out, he's progressing, but he's not ready to get back into training or in a game. It's mad, that one. He's been injured for ages. He's been injured for like 6 weeks from what seemed to be just a little knock against Liverpool. He's been out for 6 or so weeks. So it looks as though Martial probably won't be back. Harry Maguire looks to be out and Marcus Rashford should be back in the team. I think Rashford is the big one there. He's been great against City in the past. If we are going to play this counter-attacking style that we have done against the other top teams, Marcus Rashford is absolutely crucial to that. So I'm very, very glad to have him back in the squad. And finally, just a little bit of more of a reference to this Rob Dawson Q&A that he did yesterday, talking about Manchester United's transfer targets. A striker, a right back, and a goalkeeper are the priorities for next summer. Worth knowing, obviously. Interesting that there's no left back on there. It seems as though Malacia and Shaw will be keeping those roles now. There were some rumours that Luke Shaw might leave. No centre back on there either, which again, you know, if Maguire leaves, we probably will need one. So it suggests that at the moment he's happy with most of his squad. But a new right back, a new goalkeeper, and a new striker are priorities. Henderson has not been ruled out for next season. It depends on whether he wants to come and if he impresses at Nottingham Forest. And apparently the view is that Henderson's interview, which obviously that sort of now infamous interview where he kind of said he wanted to leave before Ten Hag could see him, so he didn't try and play him, which is odd. Apparently that was seen as more of a criticism of Ole than anything else, which apparently means that the bridges have not been burned with Henderson and this current management team. That is according to Rob Dawson. You can look into that as much as you want. Apparently, we're not expecting too much major in terms of January transfers, aside from some players that aren't playing like Twanzebe and Jones. But again, it's a striker, a right back, and a goalkeeper, the priorities for next summer. He wants the new goalkeeper to be very comfortable on the ball and sweep up balls behind his defenders, something which we kind of know Marcus Rashford isn't particularly good at. Glenn F says, is this live, Joe? No, it's not. Get your comments in. Ed T says, goalkeeper, Oblak, Sanchez or Meslier, right back, Timber or Dumfries, and striker, Osimhen and Kunku or Gakpo. You're probably not far off with who United's targets are going to be there. Joseph Deek says, Henderson is a proper knob. Tom Hartley says, bin him off. I think that a lot of people have kind of lost patience with Dean Henderson after that interview. Darren Cox says, shows that mug again. There you go. Martinez, the butcher. Check it out, like I said, paddockmerch.com. I don't know why, it just tastes sweeter. Your coffee tastes slightly sweeter in a paddockmerch.com mug. That's going to be all from me. Thank you very much for joining us for the news this morning. Like I said, injury updates. Maguire looks to be out for the derby. Rashford ought to be back, and Martial, we will have to wait on Ten Hag's press conference for that. Man United reportedly turned down a £100 million plus Cristiano Ronaldo swap deal for Victor Osimhen in the summer. Football's mad, isn't it? We'll be back this afternoon with the preview for Manchester United versus Manchester City. Finally, talking about real football. Me and Jay will be going through everything we need to know about that game coming up on Sunday. So make sure you check that out at 4 o'clock today. We'll be back, obviously, news, brew, everything covered over the weekend, building up to the big game versus Manchester City. So make sure you hit subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Thank you very much for joining us this morning, and we'll see you in a bit.